Many thanks for joining us on the newsroom. I am Fidalia Aguncha, Chief Medical Director of the University of Calabar Teaching Hospital, Ikpeme, says 5 more patients have tested positive for COVID-19 in the hospital. Cross River is the only state where any case of COVID-19 has not been officially confirmed in the country. In a circular issued on Friday, the medical director said 2 of the patients are workers in the hospital. He said the tests were performed using the PCR technique at the Nigeria Center for Disease Control (NCDC) accredited laboratory in Ebonyi State. Last week, Ikmeme announced that a patient tested positive for COVID-19 in the hospital, but the state government has continued to maintain that Cross River is COVID-19 free. Meanwhile, Chief of Staff to the Plateau State Governor Noel Donjor has tested positive for COVID-19. The Commissioner for Information, Dan Manjang, confirmed the development in a statement on Friday. Donjor's status is coming barely 2 days after the State Commissioner for Commerce and Industry, Abe Aku, tested positive for COVID-19. Manjang said the Chief of Staff was confirmed positive after the test was conducted for members of the State Exco on the 1st of July 2020 following the directive of Governor Simon Lalong. The Lagos State government has sued 10 private schools that flouted the closure directive of the federal and state government. Director General, Office of Education Quality Assurance, Lagos State, Abiola Seriki Ayeni, disclosed this during the second and third phase of the massive monitoring of private schools' compliance to the directive to curb the spread of COVID-19. According to her, a large number of private schools visited across the state were found to have complied, while the non-compliant schools have been sealed. She adds that the exercise would be continuous and encompassing, cutting across all the education districts in the state to discourage the nonchalant attitude of schools to this directive. The nation's airspace and airports prepare to reopen domestic flights beginning July 8. The Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria has issued new guidelines for air travelers amid the COVID-19 pandemic. A statement signed by the authority's General Manager, Corporate Affairs, Henrietta Taya, said all passengers arrive at the airport properly kitted with their face mask and ensure a minimum of 1.5-meter physical distance. It adds that aviation and port health personnel would screen each passenger and enforce compliance with the use of face masks and social distancing. More of the guidelines include that all passengers' luggage would be disinfected before entry into the departure halls. It also adds that all footwear would be disinfected and sanitized by foot mats placed at all entrances to the terminal building. Almost half of the over 400,000 persons infected by COVID-19 on the African continent have recovered from the disease. This is according to data from the Africa Center for Disease Control, ACDC. Since the world's poorest continent saw its first case in Egypt in mid-February, there has been some 414,000 cases and about 10,260 deaths so far, and this is relatively few compared with that of other regions. As of Friday morning, about 195,729 of the 414,011 infected persons have recovered and have been discharged after treatment. According to the UN Economic Commission for Africa, under the worst-case scenario with no intervention against the virus, Africa could see 3.3 million deaths and 1.2 billion COVID-19 infections. We'll take a break here to bring you more stories. Don't go away.
Hello, I'm Dr. Taufik Adeyemi, consultant orthopedic spine surgeon at National Orthopedic Hospital, Bovile, Lagos. I'm here on the platform of Scoliosis Focus Initiative program on World Scoliosis Day. Scoliosis is an abnormal sideways curvature of the spine with some rotation. These patients present with uneven shoulders, hump in the back, and even pelvis. Majority of these cases are painless. Up to 5% of our population have scoliosis, and majority of them are idiopathic, meaning that the cause is unknown. You need a thorough history examination with quality X-ray to make an assessment. Your doctor will advise you on the best treatment modality for your child. Scoliosis Focus Initiative is organizing a 2 weeks free online consultation to help you during this COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Welcome back. Adebayo Shumefun, Managing Director and Chief Executive of the Nigeria Social Insurance Trust Fund, NSITF, has been suspended indefinitely. Shumefun and 11 other top officials of the agency were on Thursday suspended by President Muhammadu Buhari for infractions on the Extant Financial Regulations and Procurement Act and other acts of gross misconduct. Meanwhile, the regional director in charge of the Ibadan region, Temitope Akinwale, has been directed to take charge as general manager in charge of finance and also oversee the office of the executive director of finance and investment as the acting executive director. Well, there is no crisis in the ruling All Progressives Congress. This is according to national leader of the party, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He made the declaration shortly after a closed-door meeting with Governor Mala Buni, chairman of the APC Caretaker Committee, and other members. Tinubu, addressing journalists after the meeting, said, quote, "There is no crisis in the party, hence no fight to reconcile." The National Executive Council of the APC last month dissolved its National Working Committee following a leadership crisis that was triggered by the suspension of its national chairman, Adams Oshomole. It thereafter set up a caretaker committee to oversee the affairs of the party for the next 6 months. Meanwhile, the All Progressives Congress has generated 258.7 million naira from the sales of expression of interest and nomination forms to aspirants ahead of the July 20th governor primary in Ondo State. So far, 12 people have purchased the expression of interest form, which is sold at 22.5 million naira, and the nomination form, which is sold at 20 million naira. The party had earlier announced that physically challenged aspirants will pay only 50% of the fee. The Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) has fixed September 19th for the governorship election in Edo, while that of Ondo State was fixed for October 10th. Let's now talk business. The Federal Inland Revenue Service (FIRS) has announced that stamp duty will now be paid on house rent and certificate of occupancy. Spokesperson for the service, Abdullahi Ahmed, who announced this, said all residents should ensure that all rent or lease documents and C of O are subject to authentication with the new FIRS adhesive stamp duty. He said this was necessary to give the instrument the force of law and make them legally binding on all parties involved in such transaction. Ahmed revealed that the new FIRS adhesive stamp duty came into being at the official inauguration of the Interministerial Committee on Audit and Recovery of Back-Year Stamp Duty that recently held in Abuja. French President Emmanuel Macron has named senior French civil servant Juan Castex to draw up the policy for easing the coronavirus lockdown as his new prime minister, as part of a government reshuffle. In a statement by the presidency, President Macron has mandated the newly selected prime minister to form a government. This is coming hours after Prime Minister Edouard Philippe and his entire government resigned from the position as Macron's ruling party reeled from their local election results and the president prepares to tackle the economic crisis resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. Odion Ighalo's strike against Norwich City has been nominated for Manchester United Goal of the Month award for June. The 31-year-old forward has been doing well since he joined the Red Devils in January on loan from Chinese League super side Shanghai Shenhua. Against Norwich, the former Nigeria international was handed his 12th appearance and scored a sublime goal to help Ole Gunnar Solskjaer men secure a place in the semi-finals of the FA Cup. The strike is Ighalo's fifth goal since teaming up with United and has now been shortlisted for the Best Goal Award in the month under review. Others nominated are Anthony Marshall, Harry Maguire, Bruno Fernandes, and Mason Greenwood. Well, that's the latest from the newsroom. Many thanks for joining us. Bye for now.